Hello and welcome to GameGuru Max live broadcast number 66, where I take you on a brief but interesting tour through the internal development nightmare that is GameGuru Max as we head hurtling towards a release at the end of November this year. And this week I've got a couple of things to show you, some pretty cool things actually, and I could show you even more than that, but I want to keep some of my powder dry for next week and the week after, which promises to be two more really cool broadcasts, so definitely try and check that out. Before any of that, just want to make sure everyone can hear me loud and clear. I've changed a couple of things around, including a new set of speakers. Want to make sure everyone is absolutely switched on to the sound of my voice. Lee, we can hear you. Thank you very much, people. I will now carry on with the demonstration. So I'm going to launch the software. As always with these live broadcasts, if you have any questions for me, please post them in the live chat. If you're lucky enough to attend live, just stick a question mark on the end and I'll scroll through at the end, find some questions and provide some answers. The questions I can't get to, I'll put in the GameGuru forums later on, along with a recording of this broadcast. So what do I want to show you today? Well, it's been a long time coming, and you've been very patient, and now we finally get to show you. Obviously you've seen the new terrain system, now you get to play with sculpting it. So you now get to go to terrain tools, which on the panel looks like this, and as you can see we've got lots of lovely sculpting modes. This is part 1 of 4 within the terrain tools evolution. The first will be sculpting, then we move on to painting, then we move on to vegetation, and finally moving on to, those last two could interchange, but effectively painting grasses, shrubs and trees. So keep an eye out for that cool thing. But right now, let's focus in on the sculpting. Anyone who's familiar with GameGuru Classic will know kind of what they're going to get, but this terrain system is much higher resolution, so you get even better sculpting capabilities. So, as you might imagine, you can raise terrain, like so. You can also change the brush size if you wanted to raise smaller areas. You can also lower the terrain, like so. Even down to the water table, so you can create a little valley. You also have the ability to flatten, so we can flatten an area of terrain. Flatten's pretty brutal, so we also have a blend mode, so you can blend out those. You also have sculpt speed, so you can control the strength of each of the operations, so it could be a fast blend or a slow blend, so you've got control over that. Just raise this a little bit, just to show you the next feature, which I think is pretty cool. So let's say you've got a plateau there. You can also have ramp. Now instead of holding down, which you did in Classic, you just click once to your starting point, click 2 as your second point. Let's make that a bit wider for everyone. Dink, dink. And as you get in, you'll actually see you've created a lovely ramp. Again, make good use of blending your sculpting so you can get a bit more natural look. And so now, as you can see, you can go down to the edge. But another cool thing about this particular ramp system, let me get the brush size right to show you something really cool. If I go to here and select, say, from there to there, and then from there to there, there to there, I think you see where I'm going with this. You can basically create a mountain pass. So go from there to there and up to a point where you can't find it. But look what I've just created. You've got an actual mountain path running up the side like so. The next best thing to actually having pre-calculated superimposing splines, you can actually now create ramps of different degrees and sizes, and that's pretty cool. Also, sometimes you may not want it completely flat, so we have something called random, which basically you can control the frequency of that random, the size of the brush, the speed at which it will operate, but you get the idea. You can rough up surfaces if you want it to look a bit more natural. Again, you can change all those settings, and if you don't like what you've done, you can maybe just blend out some of the edges and sculpt the terrain as you see fit. Couple of more cool things as well. Let's say you have a plateau here like so. And you want the same level over here. You've now got this, which selects that level, also switches to the paint mode, and now that level is the same as this level. Voila. So you actually have the ability to create, say, two sides of a canyon, and they'll actually be exactly the same height, if that's what you need in your game. And finally, something else I can show you is, let's say you, for example, let's go over here a little bit. Let's say I make a big hill, and it's, oh, I don't want that, and you've messed up all that lovely natural procedural underneath. You've got this one, which literally undoes all of your manual editing. It goes back to the procedural terrain system. And the last thing on this panel, I'll show you two different kinds of raised terrain. The one you're probably familiar with is if I click and hold, so it raises, but then the circle moves towards me. That's because the new position of where the cursor's detecting the terrain is moving as this hill grows. But if you fix to a plane, the circle stays where it is and you go straight up. So you get two different, this is the one you'll probably use the most because generally you'll be moving around, and you know, you'll always be pointing the cursor as to where you want the terrain to be edited. This one is more of a special use case, so we can just get rid of that without ruining, you know, that lovely terrain. You've now got to revert to nature sort of thing. You can revert that one as well. I think I'll keep that one, that looks pretty cool. So that's terrain sculpting. These are all the different modes that you have right now. You only get the sliders based on whether the mode actually uses it or not, so it keeps the whole UI nice and clean. And as I hinted at, we'll be showing you some painting, grass painting and some tree painting in the future, so keep an eye out for that. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you. The second thing as exciting. So if I go to new level, you're familiar with the terrain generator. You're also familiar with the fact that we can select different biomes. Now if you keep clicking it, it will randomize different kinds of biomes for you, like so, different ones. We mix it up a little bit more so you get more variety in these, and same with mountains and rainforest, like so. But here's another cool thing. Just jump down so I get sort of a more of a standing on the ground perspective, and I select canyon. Ta-da! We have trees, people. This ain't just any old tree. This tree is 400,000 trees all rendered into the system. And it's super mega super fast. I say tree system and not trees because this, believe it or not, is all the same tree. All we're doing is rotating and scaling and positioning them, but effectively the same tree. But the tree system that we have now finished and I'm able to show you today, and you'll be able to play with on Friday if you're a pre-order user, will also be used for things like shrubs. It's obviously different trees, but also shrubs and smaller vegetations, such that you'll be able to populate your landscape with more than just pretty terrain textured floors, but also the vegetation that goes along with it. So we've got a couple of different biomes that use the trees. We've got canyon, rainforest. We've also got vast fields of trees with the forest one. So if I just pick a piece of forest floor here, for example, let's say we have that one. I like this one because the floor matches the trunk. And what we're going to be working on and perfect is each biome, when we select the terrain floor and the shrubs and the grasses and the different breeds and species of tree, we'll make sure that we get a good match between the stuff that sits on the terrain and the terrain itself. So really you just have to click a biome, randomize it a little bit, drop straight in and start making your game. You don't have to worry about the nature portion of your game level. So whilst I'm in here, I want to show you something really quick. We've added animals into the collection. Not just animals, but animals that actually work. We're going to continue to be working on animals, but we have mammals, we have reptiles, we have fish, and we have birds as well. So we've got the four main groups of animal. I've dropped in a simple script using my hands-free, no need to script visual behavior editor system. not super sophisticated, and I'm hoping to make a lot more progress in terms of the animals swarming for things like fish, and flocking behaviours for birds, and what mammals do in forests or in the open plains. And reptiles probably just want to poison you or something. So I wanted to show you that. So yeah, I could literally just run probably for I think 50 minutes is how long it will take you to walk across 5 kilometres. And for that entire distance, you'll be able to walk through trees. If you try to place these objects manually, it would choke any game engine. So we've actually developed a system. We're using instancing in order to create as many trees as you're going to need. If you want to do a forest, you can just do a forest with a single button click. You don't have to start placing them all down, because who wants to do that? And of course, as I mentioned before, after painting and painting grass, you've got the tree editing mode where you can clear an area, you can rearrange trees, you can manually place things like that in order to give you some control over the forestry aspects of your game. So I hope you like what we're doing, what we're getting up to. Next week it's going to be an equally cool reveal that has nothing to do with terrain. I'll leave it at that for the moment. And then the week after, something different again, because as you imagine, we are now hurtling towards the deadline, which means everything's starting to come together. So with that, I want to check out the live chat to see if anyone's got any questions for me. And I'll just drag this across. I also wanted to mention briefly that when you do get this Friday build, if you're lucky enough to be able to get access to the Friday build, check out the new and improved seller demo. I've made some work in that regard in terms of adding things like switches, keys, doors, another zombie as a checkpoint, and a way to get to the end of the demo. You've got infinite health. Don't worry about not being able to complete the game, but just check it out. I think you'll like the improvements. Although I would say, until we actually make a small bug fix for next, or maybe even this build, set your exposure value to 6. Currently defaults to 100 and it just washes everything out. Set your exposure to 6 before you run the game. You'll get a much more moody, atmospheric experience. So I'm checking the clock. We're 12 minutes in. That's great. That means I've done all my waffling within the prerequisite 15 minutes that I allow myself for all the serious meat and potatoes. So I now have 3 official minutes to answer your questions. So let's see if we can find 1 or 3. Okay, let's start at the top. Always a good place to start at the beginning. Here's one from Zorgo33. We will only have the current weapons for release. Oh, will we? Okay. Or is this only for the current builds? Yeah, the weapons that you see in the current builds, those are the ones we're basically going to be shipping with at the end of November. And then what we're going to work on is, rather than try and do another 100 weapons, we're going to create a template and a guide which tells you or anyone how to make your own weapons. And in the background, we're also continuing to work on weapons, and we will release official weapons down the road. But we just wanted to kind of tick the box on all the major kinds of weapon: melee, a pistol shot, machine gun, and grenade. So it's basically the staples, the basic armaments and weapon types, just to start the ball rolling, make sure the quality's high before we start rinsing and repeating and regurgitating variations of those kind of weapon types. So yeah, the weapons that you see are the ones you're going to get at the end of November. Here's a question from Matthew Clark. Will GameGuru have day-night cycles, games with 24-hour clocks? Good news is we've implemented all the technology to be able to do that, so you can spin the sun around your scene, all the shadows and lighting all behave correctly. We had an idea to put the day-night cycle into the end of November release, but then we realised that there is a lot of additional stuff that we could do to make that day and night experience be more of a gameplay feature rather than it just be purely cosmetic. So we are removing it for the end of November so we can work on it and add those extra things that, say, a modern gamer would expect. A lot of people play massive open world games with day and night cycles, and it's not just about the visuals. There's also gameplay aspects that come in, like enemies that only come out at night, enemies and allies that only help you in the day, etc. Things like that. So watch this space. It is definitely on our roadmap. It's just not the one for the end of November. Here's a question from Fearless Wee. Oh no, this is an answer from Fearless Wee. Thanks very much. Let's look for another question. A question mark would be an indicator. Here we go. This is from Retro Game Block. I hear that enemy scaling in the editor is to be removed. We will be able to import our own characters at larger sizes. Yes, of course. We have very little control over the size of things you'll import with the model importer. But we do hope that you'll be importing characters that will fit through the standard size door, because all of the 1,000 plus assets that you get with GameGuru Max on release are all scaled to a certain size. So it would make sense to make sure that the stuff you import respects that general scale. But yeah, you can make characters that are smaller and larger, and then adjust the capsule height for making sure that, you know, physics still works with that larger or smaller character. But the characters that we're going to ship, we don't really want you to double the size of them. It would just look ridiculous. So we've removed that scaling factor until there's an urgent need to put it back in. Release date when? That's from Bob the Sorry Games. End of November this year is the release of the early access version of GameGuru Max. Another question from Matthew Clark. Will we be able to import height maps, convert an area of Google Maps into height and import it? Again, good news in the background. Our technology now supports that. We can select a height map, fiddle around with some settings and some scaling factors, and then bang, superimpose that over the top of the terrain you've currently been looking at. Will it be exposed as a front-line UI feature for the end of November? What I'm going to say about that is we'd like to, but we are placing priority on getting the painting, grass, shrubs, and tree editing done first. If there's wiggle room at the end of that, and it doesn't jeopardize the stability of the software, yeah, we will then have the UI elements for height map importing, which I know many of you have been super waiting for. So that's the plan. We are absolutely hoping to get that in because it is a really cool tick box for us, and we do like to show it off. Being able to create the Grand Canyon or the mountains of Snowdon, you just can't beat something like that. So yeah, we are looking forward to releasing it, if not at the end of November, then very shortly afterwards. Okay, a question from Super Confident Man. Can you link characters to make a smart object? What, you mean link two characters together as one object? I suppose you could. Not tried it. I could imagine why you'd want to do that. I do have a panache to be able to add other things to characters, like a dynamic light if the character's carrying a lantern, or a particle trail if the character is like in a cloud of poison or trailing some kind of smoke. That kind of smart object character, yes, but two characters together, maybe I misunderstood the question, so I apologise for that. Looking for a question mark, we have to scroll down quite a bit now. Found one from Robin Hood. What about stretching of the terrain texture? Yeah, we're not. We have no plans to add stretching of terrain textures in GameGuru Max. If more people would like to see the ability to stretch textures, then please enter in the comments below. I'm joking, of course. We want to make sure that stretching is left to an absolute minimum. As you saw, if you actually change the terrain in such a way that you get a really high point and then right after it a very low point, you would naturally stretch that texture. Rather than do something like tri-planar mapping, which obviously hits performance and has a lot of other horrible consequences when it comes to virtual texturing, what we've done instead is increase the density of the terrain geometry. So all you've got to do is use the blend tool and just blend it, and there's enough vertices between the highest and the lowest point where you can still maintain an almost sheer vertical rise, but you're no longer stretching the terrain. So hopefully that answers the concern there. Because if you leave your vertices spaced out too much, yeah, you get a lot of ugly stretching. You won't really see a lot of angles in the new terrain system. There's enough resolution there, and you get some nice smooth curves right down to quite a small scale. Looking for a question underneath Robin Hood's one. This is from Zorgo33. Will it be possible to turn off the camera? Slow down when it's close to ground. Yeah, I know, it is. I've been using the editor quite a while recently. And this idea that it keeps speeding up and slowing down based on your altitude from the floor, it's clever, but it kind of gets in the way and you suddenly hit a slow patch. So yeah, we're going to rewrite that so it's a little bit more natural for the day-to-day stuff, but still give you that supersonic speed if you're up in the atmosphere and you want to move over a large quantity of terrain very quickly. But I think most people will be kind of staying in the same spot, zipping around, creating their levels in some level of detail. So yeah, don't worry about that. We've got our eye on that one. We will be changing it. Here's one from Super Confident Man. What happens when the player hits the edge of the square boundary? ? Invisible wall. Yeah, invisible wall. When you hit the edge of the play area, currently you stop. Why? Because beyond the play area, there's no nav mesh and there's probably precious little physical terrain. I am hoping to expand that until such time as you literally hit the editable area zone, so you get a visual marker as to where the game ends. Right now, though, it's sort of, we've got to balance this difference between how much memory we're taking, but equally how fast it takes to prepare a test level so you can jump in and start playing it. I've talked about this in previous broadcasts, so if you want more details, check those out. But generally involves two things: segmentation of both physics and nav mesh, and the calculation of those two systems on the fly. Again, those are still up in the air, so currently we are living with the editable zone and the playable area, which for most games will be fine. It's just, you know, right now you can't run in one direction for 18 miles. Okay, so here's a no, that's not a question. So we're going to scroll down a bit more, see if we can find, here it is, a question prefixed with question. This is from Donald King II. When will the interior building maker be added back in? I cannot remember what it is called, the function that you could lay down a floor and make a building and it's currently called the structure editor, and it's available in your settings, developer mode, and then click developer options. Then scroll down and you'll see a button called structure editor. Click that and you'll get your favorite EBE editor back, where you can place down floors, walls, ceilings, carve out all that kind of cool stuff. And in fact, currently that's what the seller demo is actually using in order to make its corridors and rooms. The reason it's in developer mode is we're not really happy with it. It's not consumer level quality, but we know a lot of people might want it at some point, so we've left it in, but we've slightly hidden it. So that's where you'll find it. Go to edit, then settings, and then developer mode, and you'll click developer options and you'll see the button appear before your very eyes. Here's another question from Matthew Clark. Is there a possibility of making tunnels in the future builds? You can make a tunnel by getting an object of a wall, putting two walls down and then putting a ceiling on top, instant tunnel. If you mean tunneling through the terrain, that's not planned for the early access version. It goes beyond the scope of how we've developed the current terrain system. You're talking about things like voxels, where you can bury yourself under a mountain. All you can do right now in GameGuru Max is create a sharp valley through a hillside and then cover the top of it with rocks and other things that match the texture of the terrain, and you've created instant tunnel. That's currently the way you would do it. Other games do it that way sometimes, but we're not going the route of voxels at the moment. We're just going to perfect what we've got, make sure it's nice and fast, and it runs on 95% of game scenarios you might want to make. Here's a question from, no it isn't, that is an answer from Belly Does 3D, thanks for that. Here's another one from Super Confident Man. Building interior clipping solution yet? Yeah, that is starting to wind me up a little bit when I'm in the seller demo, and even though I can see the object, the raycast hits this ceiling that I can't see, and so I'm moving the wrong thing. That will be looked at. Currently it's a point of frustration when you're editing over a long time. We want to eliminate points of frustration, so leave that one with me. I want to make sure that I come up with something that's elegant and just feels intuitive, and you don't really have to think about it, and hopefully not even have to switch it on and off. It just kind of works for you. Okay, looking at the clock, we are blasting through. I think I've probably done about, yeah, I have about 10 minutes of answers. Wow, that's pretty good for one broadcast. So we don't charge straight over the 30-minute mark, I am going to pick 2 questions from people who've not asked me a question yet, and the rest of the questions I will answer in the GameGuru forums later on. So let's see, who hasn't asked me a question? Kevan, I don't think you have, so I'm going to assume you haven't, and I'm going to go ahead. Can we have more than one tree? Can we have 2 or 3 different tabs? Absolutely. This is our test tree. This is our tree to get 400,000 of the little buggers on the screen, and it taking less than 2 milliseconds per frame to actually render them all, which I think is mightily impressive, and big hats off to our super high-tech coder Paul, who made it all possible. But yes, we absolutely do plan to have different varieties of tree for each of the biomes, and the ability to edit them, as I mentioned earlier, so you can clear areas and you can randomize the trees around a little bit more, put them where you need them to be. And then in the tree editing mode, yes, you can also choose which trees you want as well. You don't have to be forced as to what the bio's chosen for you. You can just go through all the different trees that you like and then paint them into your scene. But it's not like placing a tree one by one. This will be more like spraying huge fields of trees with the different species. Think of it how the old grass system used to work, where you could mix two varieties together and then spray them in a natural, random way. That's the kind of system that we're aiming for. People just want to spray down the forest, not placing trees one by one. Looking for the very last question of this week's broadcast, and it is from the next. Will the tree system work with user-generated content, for example, importing your own trees, shrubs, or for sale on the store? Currently, the trees require a bit of engineering. We have full resolution, we have LOD 1, LOD 2, we have reduction into decals for rendering right in the distance. It's a very technical tree, but does that exclude the possibility of people creating their own? Absolutely not. I think that is inevitable. We'll only be able to produce so many cool looking trees. We would then hope the third-party artists kick in, take our templates and our guides, and then use that to create more trees. And then we'll be able to select those trees and import them. Check out the particle system that's currently in GameGuru Max. It'll work in a similar way. We'll give you some particles, and then when you go into the add new particle, it will give you an area, and inside that area is where you may have your third-party trees listed. Select one of those, that goes in, and then you can add that. But as I said, it's a technical tree, so don't expect them immediately. We've got to train up artists to know how our trees are designed and created. And then, but yeah, I think eventually you'll start to see lots of third-party trees, shrubs, grasses, basically anything. You know, you want to be able to create your own unique game with all your own unique graphics down the road, with absolutely nothing used from the out-of-the-box GameGuru Max. That way, when you ship the title, it's completely your own work and not just a cheap, nasty asset flip. So yeah, that is definitely on the cards. So I hope you enjoy what you've seen so far. As for me, I'm going to get straight back into my passion, which is gameplay, AI and logic, which has come along really nicely. I'll show you that in the very, very near future. We do these broadcasts every Wednesday at 4 PM BST, so if you happen to find yourself with a spare half hour, please tune in. You'll find it on our YouTube channel, GameGuru YouTube channel, if you want to find me rabbling away for half an hour every week. And for those who are lucky enough to be pre-orders, look forward to everything that you've seen in 2 days' time. I'll be releasing a build on Friday that contains the sculpting, the trees, the rodents, the animals, and of course the improved seller demo with improved AI and logic and all that cool stuff. So that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly enjoy talking. Lee always enjoys talking. And so I will speak to you all next Wednesday, 4 PM BST. Thank you for your kind attention, and goodbye.